Hello and welcome to another Active Knocker tutorial video. Now in this video, we're going to be discussing the import lead functionality in which we have with Active Knocker. So what is importing leads? Well, you may for multiple reasons want to get data from a spreadsheet and import it into your Active Knocker account. One reason is maybe perhaps you have a lead source provider and they provide you certain first names, last names, and addresses of individuals, and you want to take those and assign them to an individual sales representative. But the lead provider gives you a spreadsheet, and you want to somehow find a way to take that data and give it to an individual who works at your company via the mobile application, whether it's iOS or Android. Now, another reason you may want to use this lead import functionality is maybe perhaps you have a list of do not knock on doors or properties. Maybe you have certain properties which are already existing clients and you want them plotted on the map so that all your door knockers can actually go there and offer different services. For whatever reason it is, you will have certain data in a spreadsheet and you want to import it into Active Knocker so that those pins are all over the maps and you can either assign them to reps or just have them plotted so that reps can see them. So to start, we have added now the ability to have a web application, which means you can go to the web and you can use Active Knocker with certain functionalities to be able to log in and do certain things such as importing leads. Well, not only do we have a mobile application, but this web application is designed so that you can, first of all, to start, import leads. Well, if you go to web.activeknocker.com, and you'll see here at the top of my browser, it will take you to the login page. Now, for your email and password, it's going to be the exact same as you use to log into the mobile application of Active Knocker. So let's start by logging in. Now, at this point in time, we've developed and built the first function, which is to import leads into Active Knocker and assign them with routes to reps, or perhaps just assign and give them the leads itself, or the pins if you want to call it. So to start, let's go over to this leads tab on the left-hand side, and let's click on import. Now, when you're taken to this page, you will see in order to successfully import your leads, you have this three-step process. Step one is upload. Step two, we validate to make sure the data is structured correctly. And step three, the import will automatically process and it will move forward. Now, the reason why I say that is you may have, when we get into the document I will show you, you may have certain leads in which you have a longitude and latitude of the pin, but you do not have the address. While on the other side, you may have the address and not the longitude and latitude. Well, that's fine. Either way, we support it because we've built it from the ground up so that if you do have one or the other, and by the way, you do need one or the other, in which I will explain, it will automatically import and assign it to the given user. So over here, you will notice if you read through what is written, the first thing is it has to be in CSV format. Now, when you're saving your spreadsheet or you're receiving a spreadsheet, make sure all the time it is in CSV format because that is what is recognized when importing into Active Knocker. Now, you're going to want to take a look at the two documents you see here. There's a reference document and an example leads document. I highly recommend you download both. The reason why is the reference document will show you exactly what the requirements are to successfully import your data from a spreadsheet into Active Knocker. And the example leads CSV file in which you will download will be an exact copy of a sample if I were to import leads into Active Knocker so that you can see how it's structured properly. And when you do import that file, it will go through successfully. And I'm going to explain that in this tutorial video. Now, before I do that, I also want to explain you have two functions here, two different import types. You can import data and automatically assign it with these pins with a route. So let's just say, for example, I'm given 10 pins from, which is also leads, from a lead source provider. And I want to assign 5 of those to one user and 5 more to another user. And each of the 5 pins that I'm assigning, which are leads to the users, I also wanted to build out a route so that the sales representative can go from property to property to property. So this is what this function is on the left-hand side. You're assigning pins with a route. And yes, in one document, you can assign the pins, which is the leads, to a sales representative with a route. And yes, when importing your spreadsheet, in the exact same spreadsheet, which I'll show you, maybe you want certain pins to go to one sales rep and the other one to go to the other. You don't have to upload 2 separate files. I'm going to show you how in one spreadsheet, one file, you can have the sales representatives who are supposed to get the leads all uploaded and assigned in one upload. Now on the right-hand side, where it says assign pins without a route, this is basically just saying I'm going to get the leads, get the pins, and assign them to a particular sales representative. And whatever that sales representative wants to do with those pins, it's up to them. They just have the pins. There's no route that is actually going to be in that route planner over there. So you're just giving them the leads, giving them the pins, and they get to do what they choose with it. Now, we have also defaults here. I highly recommend you hover over this question mark for the first few times to get familiar with what this is. But what it says is if data being imported does not match any attribute in your ActiveKnocker account, the default you select will be imported. And I'm going to show you that in reference back to this. It's very simple. Pretty much in your document, when you're uploading it, which I'll show you how to structure it, if no sales representative email is present in the spreadsheet, well, who are we going to assign those pins, those leads in that spreadsheet to? Remember, if we're importing leads into ActiveKnocker, we need to tell it who's going to receive these pins. So maybe perhaps in the spreadsheet, you don't put the email address of the individual who the pin belongs to. Well, if you select, for example, Android admin, your username, it would be the first and last name of any sales representative or user, then basically when you're importing your data, and if you do not and did not create any email address in that sheet, well, that individual pin is going to be automatically defaulted to this user. And the same goes for when I talk about and we show you the spreadsheet. If let's just say you did not have any pin that is the data inside that spreadsheet, and you assign here new leads, that means if it's blank or there's no exact match of an exact pin you have in ActiveKnocker, well, it's going to override it and it's going to automatically assign it to new lead. That is a pin in which we created in our ActiveKnocker account. Yours will be different. As you know, when you set up your ActiveKnocker account, you will have and see your own pins in which you created for your company. So let's start off by opening this reference document, and I'm going to show you when you download it and open it what it looks like. Well, here you're going to see street, city, and this is the header column it's going to be. Street, city, state, province, country, zip code, postal code, longitude, latitude. This is all the data in which we have a field inside of ActiveKnocker in which you can import data to, so that when you're in ActiveKnocker and you click on a pin, it'll automatically take the data from that sheet and put it on that individual pin, depending on how much data you have in your spreadsheet, in which you will see as we progress through this tutorial. Well, over here you have a required column. That is this individual header data required? As you know, since we're dealing in ActiveKnocker with pins, well, basically, we need to assign a certain location to a pin. So yes, the street address, city, state, country, zip code, this is required on any individual pin. And if you look at the notes, it says, well, it's only required if the longitude and latitude is not present. Well, what does that mean? Well, basically, if you don't have the longitude and latitude of this individual pin in your spreadsheet in which you are importing, well, we need an address because we got to tie this lead or pin to a certain individual address, a location. But if you have the longitude and latitude where you're importing, you do not need to have this data, because as we know, with a longitude and latitude, we can pinpoint exactly where that location is to be on a map for that individual pin in which you are importing. So as you will see, we have property type, whether it's residential or commercial. You can read through, it says if no value is provided, it will be assumed the default is residential. So if you do type in commercial, then just make sure you put a business name. And title is Mr., Mrs., and Miss, for example. First name, last name, email address. This is the email address of the customer, the lead. Maybe perhaps you have the email. As you see, it doesn't say it's required over here, so it's not required to have that data, but if you do have it, we're going to import it on that PIN. Phone number, the social, the notes, any notes you may want on this individual PIN, you can import it. And also the PIN itself. As you know, when you create your Active Knocker account, you're going to have multiple PINs, such as not interested, not home, whatever your PINs are. You have to, it is required to have a PIN, because when we're creating and importing PINs, it is important that we match the exact value, the exact name. So if, for example, when you're importing your data, the PIN is named not interested, and you want to import a bunch of leads that are not interested, you can do that, and just make sure when importing in the header, which I'll show you, it says not interested. Or maybe perhaps you have a PIN called a new lead or just lead. Well, when you are importing your data, it's very important that you type the name of the PIN. And by the way, if you did not, remember, if you did not have that data, if we go back to the import function in which we started at, remember we had those defaults? Well, it states directly there, if you selected, let's just say lead, and you didn't have data, it's going to override it and it's going to automatically take care of that. And then the seller email, this is how we track which individual user is going to get the PIN in which we are importing. So it's very important the email address of your sales rep is exact, that it matches, so it knows which individual user is going to get that particular PIN. And yes, as I'll show you, when you're importing, it does not matter. You can have multiple sales reps on one spreadsheet when importing it, and it will automatically assign it to the given sales representatives. So let's dive on in and let's show you the import sample document in which we created. Okay, so let's explain what we're looking at right now. This is my sample document in which I created, which let's just say was I received data from a lead source provider, and I want to take that data and import it into Active Knocker and assign these PINs with data to individual sales representatives or users at my company. Well, to start, you will see here in row number 1, we have street, city, state, province, country, zip code. Well, these are all the possible headers, the possible data in which you can import into Active Knocker, where there is an actual place on a PIN where we have that data. Now, one thing I want you to know is, for example, when we're importing the data, it says street. So these rows over here, this is one PIN. Everything from left to right is going to be one individual PIN. So we're saying this is the street, this is the city, this is the state, province, and its property type is going to be residential. One thing I want you to notice on here is we don't have a longitude and latitude. So because we don't have a longitude and latitude, remember what's needed in order to import this PIN successfully is we need the postal code, zip code, we need the country, we need the state, province, we need this data as per that reference document. Those were required. And as you see on this other one, where the longitude and latitude is given, we don't need this because now we can pinpoint this exact location and create a PIN for this individual so that it is pinpointed with the longitude and latitude. And by the way, you'll also notice the property type in this PIN is going to be commercial. So we gave this PIN, which is the commercial business account in which we want this PIN to be imported, a business name, and also a point of contact, a first name, a last name, an email address for this customer, this client, or this potential customer, their phone number, and other data that you do see over here. Notes, as you know, if you've been using Active Knocker, we have a note section to where you can write notes on an account. And the PIN is the actual PIN in which it is being imported into Active Knocker so that when you're on your map, you see the PIN that matches exactly the name of the PIN in your Active Knocker account. So on the first one, you'll notice here, we put not interested. This is because in our ActiveKnocker account, we actually created an exact pin that is named not interested. It has to match the exact text. But in this one here, you'll notice I did this on purpose to show you guys and gals what happens. You will see it's blank. We don't have a pin. And as we mentioned in the reference document, it's very important that if we're importing a lead, it is required to have a pin. Well, I'm doing this on purpose because if you recall on the default tab, which I'll show you right now, here we have defaults. This defaults over here pin says if when importing any data from the spreadsheet, it's blank or it doesn't match, which pin should be automatically created as? So in this case, I'm going to put new lead. Okay, and let's go back to our document. So what this is referring to is if this is blank, remember I just selected new lead. That means it's going to import it and automatically create a pin out of this pin in which we are importing, and it's going to be called new lead, even though I don't have anything here because our default we selected is new lead. In this case, this client is going to be entered in as an actual lead. We have a different pin called new lead and lead, let's just say, in this example. So here is the individual user who's going to receive this individual pin. And in this seller email column, what we're going to notice is we have three different users who are going to receive three different pins. So what you'll notice here is there's one user, two users, and three users. And by the way, if this, for example, was blank, where we said there is no sales representative, and we go back to our default tab here, and we selected, for example, this user, Android seller, well, when we are in our document over here, and this is blank, that means it's going to automatically default to that user in which we selected in the dropdown. Okay, so what we also are going to explain is we have a functionality that makes this really robust for every individual user to use. Maybe perhaps you want to import data that we don't have a field for, but you want it in the notes section. So if you create headers that do not match the exact name of a header, which is a field that we have inside of ActiveKnocker, such as, do you have a dog? Do you have a cat? Like, does this client in which we are importing, do they have a cat? Do they have a dog? And you have answers? Well, ActiveKnocker doesn't have a field that states, do they have a dog or do they have a cat? So what is this going to do? Well, any headers that you create up here and the answers for each individual pin in which you are importing, well, basically what it's going to do is it's going to write this in the notes. For this customer named Anton Fish at this address, and the pin is going to be not interested, in the notes section, it's going to say, do you have a dog? And the answer is yes. Do you have a cat? And the answer is no. So create whichever headers you want if you want to import data that we don't have fields for, and it'll be in the notes section, just to let you know. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to take this document and we're going to import it into ActiveKnocker. But before we do that, please always remember, we have to make sure it is in .csv file. So when saving the file, make sure you save it as a .csv file. Okay, so now we're about to upload the file and then process through the validation and import stages. So let's click on Choose File. Let's select the file in which we created with those headers, and let's open it. Now that we have this file over here, and we selected, remember, if there's no sales rep email inside that spreadsheet and we are importing it, well, we're going to give those pins to Android seller. This is the name in my demo server for this individual user. And also in the pins tab, if there's no pin that is entered, the data in our spreadsheet, well, it's going to automatically be given to a pin named new lead. So let's proceed to the next step. Okay, so step one, it got uploaded. Now step two is the validation process. Let's click on the next step. So what happens when we validate is we got a green check mark, and also you'll see here there are some warnings. Warnings will not stop you from moving forward. If it showed up in red that there are errors, you have to go and correct the errors. Like, for example, maybe you do not have any address and you don't have a longitude and latitude. Well, it will tell you that directly here. You got to go back and re-upload your file if you didn't do it correctly, because ActiveKnocker will not know where to put this pin. So we've put all the validation rules there so that in case it does break the validation, well, it'll let you know. Well, what are the warnings here? Remember, we said we do not have headers named "Do you have a dog?" and "Do you have a cat?" Well, it says that's fine. It's just letting you know that since we don't have a column for that, do note that that's going to be imported into the notes section on each of the pins. So that's just a warning there to make sure that you know. And also over here where it says number of leads, it tells you how many leads you're actually importing. So in this case, it's 3. Let's go to the submit. Voila! Once it's done, you click on the OK button and you have now successfully imported your data from that sheet into ActiveKnocker. And within a matter of minutes, your sales representatives will get notifications that they have brand new leads, and they'll get a pop-up notification so that they can run their routes and do so much more with ActiveKnocker. I want to thank you so much for watching this video. And do note, if you have any questions in regards to it, please reach out to our support team over at support@activeknocker.com. Thank you very much.